on, kids!
Wassail.
Drink ale. There we go. Drink ale.
I don't want to eat anything with the name Schmong in it.
But that thing they do.
Yeah, shall we go the puddings and the copper, Peter? He's like that, but way more farty. Hello.
Ridiculous. Hello and welcome back. I'm Nick.
And I'm Jace.
And we are Saturday Morning Seance. And this is the Christmas edition,
Yuletide
edition of Esoteric Tizwas.
What a time of year!
Cheers.
Cheers. Wassail.
Wassail.
You're supposed to say drink ale.
Am I?
Yeah.
Do it again.
Wassail.
Drink ale. There we go. Drink ale.
Boozy.
So, I notice, not that I could miss it, you got a big bowl of sprouts here, bro.
Mine.
Welcome. You're welcome to them.
Why?
They make me chuck.
No, see, I bought them out because the representations of our Lord Brassicus, who was an ancient pagan god of the sprout, and I plan to bring him back. He's a lesser known god. You know, where that poem, Sir Gawain and the Green Knight?
Yeah.
He's like that, but way more farty.
Surely you're making that up.
You know it's not true.
Okay.
Christmas is made up, isn't it? Yuletide's made. It's all made up. All this. However, there are reasons, aren't there? There are symbolic reasons why all this stuff exists. They're deep. They go so deep.
You know, like our Lord Baby Jesus and all that.
No, that is nothing in the timeline compared with how far this stuff goes back. For instance, this stuff goes back so far, they built gigantic stone temples because of it.
You mean like Stonehenge?
Yeah, like Stonehenge. I mean, how far does Stonehenge go back?
5,000 BC, maybe more, probably more.
Yeah, so another one like Newgrange in Ireland, set up. Originally, people thought they were set up for midsummer, but it turns out they were wrong. It was about this time of year, it was about midwinter. The latest research on this is just up the road from Stonehenge, a place called Durrington Walls. You heard of Durrington Walls?
I've not heard of that one.
Yeah, just up the road, there's this ginormous, I mean, I can't even tell you, I think it's nearly a mile round. This is a former circle. They found pits and they found where stones were, and it went all the way around. It's called Durrington Walls.
Oh, yeah, it's right by Stonehenge, isn't it?
I think it's away. About not even 2 miles away. And what they found there is they've done archaeological work there, and they've found bone fragments from vast amount of beasts. So largely pigs and cows, like so bovine and swine, where they've feasted, and they must have gathered in huge amounts of people there, and it's basically a massive knees up.
And it's all based around wintertime,
It's all based around the midwinter, yeah. And the reason they can tell that is because they've looked at the pig's teeth in particular. Now, when they're fattening pigs up, they feed them a lot of barley and stuff with a lot of sugars in, and it rots the teeth, and they can tell the age of the pigs by the teeth.
Okay.
And when they were born, so they were that year's swine, but they were fattened up for that period. So they were slaughtered at midwinter.
Instead of turkeys, like we have now.
Essentially, yeah. I mean, it's where maybe the idea of feasting comes about. Why would you feast? Why would you think, let's have a knees up at this time of year? It's the hardest time of year. If you put yourself in the shoes of our ancestors, you've got the shortest day of the year, the longest night of the year occurring on the solstice, the 25th of December.
So the 25th of December is a very important date.
Yeah, because that originally would have been the day of the solstice.
So the 25th of December, or around that time, is a pagan date.
Yeah, it's before Christianity.
This tastes like the cow got into an onion patch.
Was it adopted by the Christians, or when was it adopted by the Christians?
I think it was around the 4th century. So it was written down by Scriptor Cyrus, who's some sort of notary or something.
Is he Roman?
He might have been.
Sounds it.
He might have been. He wrote down that the pagan tribes celebrated the birth of the sun on the 25th of December, but he noticed that all the Christians were joining in with it. So they resolved to sort of discuss it and come up with a resolution. And all the, as they were called back then, church doctors, what they did is they decided that because the Christians had got a leaning to that festival that they were celebrating, that they would choose it as the date for this nativity idea they come up with, which is the birth of Jesus. Even though nobody knows, no biblical scholar worth his salt would give a date of when Jesus was born, because they just don't know, because it doesn't say in the Bible at any point. So they just chose that date because it was auspicious with the tribes. Plus it was a good move, really, if you think about it, because it's like, well, they're celebrating it anyway, join in a bit and then maybe coax them across.
The nativity occurring on December the 25th is made up.
Pretty much, yeah. There's no like real nativity in the Bible. They mention the birth of Jesus and things like that, and some of the events surrounding the birth of Jesus in the books of Luke and Mark, but other than that, the whole thing that we learn when we were children, like you had the stable, you had the star, you had the wise men, you had all this stuff.
Yeah, the sheep and...
But if you look at it, it's magical thinking.
Isn't it true that it was invented by the monk who loved animals, saved animals?
Oh, the nativity. Yeah. I think he was sick in bed, and to stop him being bored,
he's a saint, isn't he?
St. Francis
of Assisi, that's it.
He's very kind to animals, so he's a good lad, really. Yeah, I think he came up with the idea while he was sick in bed or whatever, or he was crook, and he couldn't do his normal animal healings. I don't know what he did. And to amuse himself, he made like a mise-en-scene of animals and figures carved. He had a local woodcarver carve them up.
A tableau,
yeah, of Christmas scene. See, I'm calling it a Christmas scene, of a scene of like a stable with Jesus there and all the surrounding characters. And I think that he set the artistic standard of what it should look like. I mean, there's one up where we live at the moment in the town square. You've got one. How long it'll last, I don't know.
I haven't seen it yet.
It's quite a good one. I mean, I think it's a proper Victorian job, all carved, wood, painted, really top notch, as you'd expect from the Victorians. It's a nice thing. But yeah, none of that is anything to do with Christmas. What it was like a very useful date for them to sway people. The way they spun the story. So what you've got is you've got someone who's half human, half divine. You've got someone who, it's like a liminal thing. He was born half inside but half outside.
What do you mean?
So he wasn't born in a building because he was refused entry to the inn. You know what I mean? So she was in like a stable when she was giving birth. Magical dad. You know, she was impregnated by a ghost.
Right.
And then the other sort of magical thing is like he's sort of at one with animals. But you've got the animal thing going on as well. You've got the lowing cattle, wherever lowing is. I mean, I don't know what lowing is.
Sounds like some sort of singing.
Anyway, apparently he didn't cry. Because little Lord Jesus, no crying he makes. Which I found difficult to believe.
Is that in a carol?
Away in a manger.
Away in a manger where the sheep eat. No.
Yeah, the sheep. Yeah.
So a manger.
Yeah.
Is like, it's basically a trough.
It's a trough. I think the idea was it would appeal to people on the lower ends of society. Because if he's born a king, it's very difficult to sort of associate yourself and maybe put yourself in the shoes of someone like that. But if you're like a lowly poor grafter, a grunt, then it'd be easier to see his point of view, maybe. That's, you know, so there's that semi-divine thing going on. And some wizards came look at him.
Nobody ever blinks an eye at that, do they? When you talk about it. I mean, we even call them the Magi.
Yeah, because they were magicians. They were, I think, probably like from Persia, somewhere like that. You know, where there was a strong magical tradition. But I think all this stuff gets whipped up into a nice, juicy story that'll sell books. But the time of year, the solstice, the celebrations of the solstice, like all this stuff, we've got the lights, the twinkly lights, we've got the greenery, we've got associations with certain plants, we've got associations with certain animals, we've got the feasting thing.
So what other animal associations are there? I mean, with Christmas, I mean, does each animal have a significant meaning? Like in the nativity scene, you've got the donkey or the horse or whatever it is, and you've got the cow and the sheep, and I mean the turkey isn't mentioned.
No, we'll maybe talk about turkeys a bit later because that's more of a medieval introduction. The animal association, so like cattle, if you think about it, if you think back to the stuff we were saying about Durrington Walls, so the cattle thing, I mean, if you look at the bull cult, I mean, the bull cult, how old's that? You know, when you look at all these Paleolithic drawings on cave walls and stuff, it's all big aurochs and stuff like that. It's cattle. Obviously, by 2,000 years ago, they'd have been domesticated way before. I think the animal thing is sort of pre-Christian. It's like the old pagan tribes of Europe. Animals play a big part. At midwinter, the solstice, the actual celebration, I think, if I remember rightly, it didn't happen on midwinter. It happened on the next full moon after midwinter. So this year, the next full moon after midwinter is Boxing Day, for instance. But it could be anywhere, I think, in a 12-day period. Very similar to celebrations we have now as regards feasting, drinking. You know, everything will involve drinking, every celebration. Sacrifices, animals, like horses. Used to sacrifice a horse. They'd eat horse. You know, they'd cut it up and boil it in a kettle in the longhouse, and they'd all be there celebrating everything. But then what they'd do is they'd get a bunch of birch twigs, dip it in, and have what they call a blot. I think it is Norse for blood. And then they'd flick it onto the idols and the temple walls. You know, because I think the longhouse was both. It was a temple and like a place where they'd have a booze up.
We're talking about a Viking tradition there, then.
Well, Norse. Yeah, so, you know, Viking, actually, I think you know this, don't you? Viking wasn't someone with...
It's a verb.
Yeah, it's like you go a Viking.
Spectacles at Christmas, you know, like plays and things like that, involve animals like the hobby horse and stuff.
Yeah, there's a long history of animals associated with festivals like that. Yeah, like japing about, you mean? Poor old Oss, Mary Louise. He's freezing in here, I don't know if you can tell, I can see your breath.
Right.
The skeleton horse. The Mary Louise translates to the grey mare, grey mane or grey Mary, thought to have originated from Celtic mythology. The pale horse is thought to be able to pass into the underworld. The symbolism of the Mary Louise remains of great importance. When reinventing the tradition, intriguing variations occurred, but the symbolism remains the same. Horses' skulls are painted with ancient runic symbols from the Celtic past. Sometimes the horse's eyes are filled with baubles, and the mane is plaited with ribbons or made from evergreen plants. A white cloth covers the actor, who animates the elaborate and often mischievous character. I said mischievous.
Mischievous
character. The first known written documentation of the Mari Lwyd was in 1800 by J. Evans in his book A Tour Through Part of Northern Wales. The origin of the tradition remains a mystery. Links have been made to other British customs where the poor used hooded animal characters to make entertainment to try and raise money, basically a begging ritual. However, it was revived by the Llantrysant Folk Club in the last century, and a family in Llangwynedd have reached their third generation of hosting the Mari Lwyd in their inn.
It's a very meaty ritual, you know what I mean, with the, it's like quite gruesome with the skull.
Horsey skulls were often used as a patch of paint magic. So they'd like bury them in the foundations, or they put them in the loft, or apparently one of the reasons they used to do this is because it used to improve acoustics for singing and dancing or something.
Coming out of the horse's skull?
I haven't got a clue.
Or it resonating in the room?
I'm not sure.
Or through the horse's sinuses?
I think a lot of these things come from the fact that you've got an horse's head to spare. Because pit ponies, have you seen them? They just wear little helmets and everything.
I wouldn't like to be down a mine with a massive horse.
You imagine how many people got crushed by a pit pony. I bet there's records for such.
Amazing thing that they used to take a horse 2 miles under the ground.
Yeah, and it lived down there 24/7, 364 days a year. One day a year they used to get holiday and they used to bring it back to the surface.
Yeah, I had an holiday.
Here, this is where you could be. Back down the pit. I think it was so brutal, man. Life back then was so brutal.
Harsh.
Yeah, and I think this is probably where some of this mythology comes from, because life was so unbelievably harsh. Compared with now, in the 18th century, they used to have like hobby horse tournaments, and I think they might have revived something similar.
Oh no,
have you seen them?
It's such an embarrassment.
Dancing round like.
I don't know what to think about them, because I think, oh, good on you.
Good on them, they're idiots.
But that thing they do.
Well, they're cantering and like, oh, look at the forelocks. You know what I mean? That sort of thing.
But like them the dressage that they do.
That hopping, it's
I'm really sorry if anybody's really into that, but it looks a bit mad.
If you're into that, what are you doing? Come on.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thing, but hobby horses, yeah, they used to have tournaments and they used to prance about like that. Well, obviously there was a lot more going into it because you'd have to design and decorate and basically ornament the thing. With a hobby horse, it's fine. I think it's fine. There's some sort of creative element gone into it, but just running around like a dickhead trying to pretend to be a horse.
Is this where flogging a dead horse comes from? The phrase.
Well,
I don't know if anybody's familiar with that.
The Mari Lwyd, that's exactly what it was.
Flogging a dead
You've
horse.
got the remains of a dead pit pony. You put it to use, going around begging, earning money for your beer and whatnot. You know what I mean? I don't know if that's where the term comes from, but if it lends itself to anything, it's certainly that. They're like reconstructions. I don't know if they were real and they're based on stuff that's written down, because a lot of this stuff wasn't written down, you know, because I think it's a bit like, you know, the Celts. Celts didn't write much down. People wrote about them, like the Romans, but they didn't write much down. Everything was word of mouth. Everything was oral tradition. So they tell each other of all the things that they needed to know, rather than writing them down. And then it wasn't obviously until the Romans came along, who were, you know, they're all for that. They're all for writing down and recording stuff. I think I might be right in thinking. If you think I'm wrong, please tell me. They used to sacrifice the horse, but they'd skin the horse, and they put the horse on the frame, like the shape like a horse. And I'm wondering, maybe that's where the hobby horse idea might have come from. I don't know, you know, because if you look at the academic records and things like that, I think the hobby horse thing goes back maybe 1,000 years, but he must have been much older. It seems to me that you look back, if you look at the archives of what's been written down and you look at all the research and you do it thoroughly, it's sort of the late medieval period, so the 16th and 17th centuries, where a lot of this stuff starts to be written down. And just because it was only written down then doesn't mean that it doesn't go back much further.
Probably way back.
Yeah, and I think the main reason for that was the invention of the printing press, Gutenberg printing press. Because before that, I mean, it's like it was a very expensive deal to make a book, to write a book. It was only the elites and the very rich who could afford to do it. So you're going to waste your precious vellum or parchment or whatever it is you're writing on, are you going to waste that talking about some nonsense that some toothless peasant's doing, you know, as regards he's dressing up as a horse and gambling about the village, frightening children, or are you going to write about how great the king is? They're going to do that. So I think it's only until the Gutenberg press comes along, it's like, and then the technology sort of developed from the textile industry with the fibre thing, so they could produce cheap paper. I think that's the only reason it was. The records don't really go back much further than that. The evidence is lacking, but lack of evidence doesn't mean it didn't exist before. Just because it wasn't written down, like we're talking about the press, the printing press. Before that, who's going to waste paper on that? Or parchment or vellum or whatever you want to call it. Who's going to waste the money on that when they could write about how magnificent the king or the lord is or whatever? They're not going to do it. You found the earliest reference to it. Doesn't mean that's when it started. I'm positing that it goes back much further. In fact, it's that thing again about genetic memory. I think these things are in us. I think this time of year is in us, especially in the northern climes. We're tilting away from the sun, and it's dark, and it's like it's full of ghosts, it's full of demons. And I think that, you know, the Halloween thing is basically the start of the creepy season, because that whole time of year up until, you know, late February, it's like it's so dark, it's so miserable. And if you're going to pop it, if you're going to peg it, you're going to peg it at winter. You're going to peg it between that period of late September through to February. And I think the lighting of candles comes from fire festivals, which brings us to things.
Which also occurs around Halloween.
Yeah, Halloween. I mean, they love the fire. Do you know what I mean? The fire represented the sun at the end of the day. You know, what else would it represent other than that?
He's a tall Caucasian male that doesn't appear armed, wearing sunglasses.
Holidays are coming. Holidays are coming.
Coca-Cola, yeah.
Coca-Cola. So the red and the white,
yeah,
of Santa Claus.
It's about drugs.
It's about the drug. It's about the fly agaric, the hallucinogenic qualities of the red and white toadstool that's associated with this time of year.
Yeah, so they make up that stuff about Eastern European shamans.
Yeah,
like eating the red and white agaric,
or getting the reindeers
to eat it. They used to eat it, and then they used to piss and then collect and drink the piss because it would somehow purify whatever the antigens in it.
Apparently, the liver or the kidneys.
Ibotenic acid.
It gets rid of the purgative.
Yeah,
part.
The ibotenic acid, which gives you the bad guts.
Yeah.
So by feeding it to a reindeer, then they collect the piss of the reindeer, neck that, and then be off on one, and reindeers flying and all that lot.
Yeah.
I'm not buying it.
You may as well collect the dung.
Yeah.
Because it's
Why
shit.
not? Yeah, is that where Maltesers come from?
Yeah.
You know.
Okay.
No.
So he's not red and white because of fly agaric and hallucinogenic exploits. He's red and white because Coca-Cola said so.
Well, I think you're not far off the mark there, because there's the other thing where people saying, you know, these sort of, I think what you call them is like quack antiquaries. People like Sir James Fraser, you know, who wrote a book called The Golden Bough, which is an amazing book. It's an amazing read, but a lot of the information that was in it is jumping and making assumptions. He's getting an idea and then applying it and thinking, yeah, that fits, so therefore it is. But the red and white thing comes from the sacrifice.
Right.
The blood in the snow.
Right.
You know what I mean? But I'm not sure about that. One thing I'm pretty sure about is that you're right and Coca-Cola made it up.
What's the artist?
Nast.
Norman Rockwell.
No, Norman Rockwell came after Nast.
Oh, right, okay.
I think his name is Thomas Nast. He came up with the original. You know the very famous one where he's sitting there and he's got a big pipe on?
Yeah.
That's Thomas Nast.
Right, okay.
But I think You brought up an interesting point, really. Christmas as we know it, and let's face it, whether you're Christian, or not, the Christians did bring a certain charm to the proceedings. Do you know what I mean? They did. Who doesn't love a carol?
They're great, yeah.
Close harmony singing at Christmas.
Yeah.
It's still, when I think about some of my favourite carols, it sends a chill up the spine. However, I think the people who are responsible for the Christmas that we know and love, or the Yuletide that we know and love, are the Americans. I think they fashioned Christmas into exactly what it is now.
A bit like Halloween as well.
Yeah, I'm not on about it's so commercialised. I'm just on about every sort of aspect of it. I think that guy named Clement, was it? He wrote last, what was it? Santa Coming Down the Chimney.
The Night Before Christmas.
The Night Before Christmas. Washington Irving, in his sketchbook.
Right.
He waxes lyrical about Christmas. And Charles Dickens. Now, Dickens was a big, he went around America doing his bit, did a big book tour round America, and I think that is what fashioned Christmas into what we have grown up with. And I think it's, in one way, there's loads of charm about Christmas, but there's also, it's pretty vapid and it's a little bit empty, whereas when you look at the old stuff, I don't know, it's just so full of life and vigour and stuff that you think, almost like it gives it a bit of a frisson, like, should I really be enjoying this? Do you know what I mean? And I think, but the Americans, I think, fashioned it. Dickens, what he does, he made it about family, didn't he? He centred it around the family. What were they called? Not the Scratchets. What were they called? Cratchits. The Cratchits. He made it about family. And
he ramped it up a bit as well by making one of them a bit lame.
Well, yeah. Who hasn't watched the Muppet Christmas Carol and not wanted shed teeth?
Oh, little frog Cratchit on the stairs.
And it's nice. It's a story and it moves us.
It does, yeah.
However, I like the blood and gore of the pagan, old, pre-Christian stuff that seems to chime with me. I don't know, does it speak to me because I'm an adult, whereas when I was a kid that sort of stuff would have bored me? I don't know.
So would you prefer that Santa Claus remained green?
The colour of him, the green thing, I mean, I think that's echoes of the Green Knight story.
Yeah. And
the Green Man, it's that green thing, it's that in the midst of what looks like the world's dying, and it's stark.
The skeletons of trees.
Yeah, and the landscape simplified with snow. Then there's this shock of green. And I think it's the colour of the green. This is the holly and the ivy, isn't it? It's like where the holly and the ivy come from. So
do they always remain green?
Well, not only that, they grow in the shade. And I think it's this grows in defiance of the darkness. And that's why we bring it indoors. However, it's like Christmas. Christmas really wasn't celebrated by Christians.
What do you mean by it?
Until, I think the first time it's written down is about 1038, so 11th century. The first time it's written down, Christmas Day or whatever. And then I think it was a few years after that William the Bastard was crowned. The Norman invaders.
Yes.
Who invaded 1066.
Yeah.
He was crowned on Christmas Day. From then, they didn't really celebrate it. They didn't think much of it. You know what I mean? They didn't celebrate it like they do now. It's only, I think it's probably from the 16th, 17th century that they thought, even then they were scrapping. I mean, name of that guy, load of warts, round helmet.
Not Oliver Cromwell.
Cromwell. During when he got rid of
Did he have loads of warts?
Yeah. He's like, he wanted Luca.
Okay, I didn't know that. I didn't know he was covered in warts.
Yeah, he was covered in warts.
I know he was a nasty chap. Maybe he was nasty.
Well, I don't think
because
he was
of
nasty.
the warts.
I think know what it was. It's Puritans, wasn't it? They read that book and they take everything as like, oh, this is how it must be. So they suck the joy out of everything. But during Cromwell's reign, because the Puritans were largely in charge. Christmas is a Catholic-y thing. They love all that ceremony. They love a big show, whereas Protestants don't. So what happens is you got Cromwell and the Puritans in charge. They suppressed Christmas. I don't know if I haven't found any information to say they banned it. They sort of did, but how can you enforce something like that? And I'm sure during the, I say, reign of Cromwell, he did sort of end up wanting to be the king of things, you know what I mean? But he suppressed Christmas, and I think they did put a ban on it. But there's a load of myths surrounding it about banning mince pies and all this. That never really happened. I think some people were arrested who were thought to be going to a party and stuff. There's records of people being arrested.
Like they did at number 10 with all them their party.
Yeah, well that's the thing. These people telling us how we should celebrate Christmas, where they're you know what I mean? They're having an amazing time, where everyone else is sat around one single candle, you know what I mean? Eating, gnawing on a bone, and they're living it up. It's the same, and it's always been the same. Don't trust them. Yeah, and the year Cromwell died, I think they made Christmas, they banned Christmas in America. So 1659, court of Massachusetts said, you know, they're not to celebrate it. Because they don't want people enjoying themselves, do they? It's a form of control. But that's what I'm saying. I think America, they've shaped Christmas into what it is now. In fact, they were nuts about it, and it was made a public holiday in 1870, something like that.
When did that happen in the UK? Or Europe? Is it the same in Europe? I don't know.
I don't know.
When did it happen in the UK?
In the UK, it was 1958, before they made it a public holiday.
What?
Yeah. Before you had the right to have a day off. But and Boxing Day, the day after, that wasn't until 1970 something, 72, 74, something like that.
So Scrooge was right then?
Pretty much, yeah.
He should have started
I think
working.
Dickens saw this and thought, you know, where's the largesse of spirit? And he was right about that, I think. You know, Dickens and Washington Irving, that is Washington Irving's descriptions.
But that is a big difference. I mean, 1870 in the US.
Yeah, and 1958
here.
America, we can thank you for this. I don't know, the warmth, the festivity, the joyousness, the light. We can sort of thank you for basically expounding that and enlarging it in many senses. You know, because if it was left to Puritans in this country, they squish the fun out of everything.
Yeah.
We human beings, we're supposed to enjoy ourselves. Despite what these religious nutcases say, I think we should enjoy ourselves.
So the pagans all enjoy themselves?
Yeah, because I think from enjoyment and from festivity comes creativity.
Yeah.
Whereas these people just want to squish the joy out of everything. They basically just want control of an ant farm. And, you know, they're certainly not going to get it. The laws changed depending on who the monarch was. So I think Henry VIII, he had a big hand in how Christmas is celebrated or not celebrated. Traditions and stuff that he changed the law on. So one of the things was a lot of these sort of entertainments and plays that used to go from house to house. I mean, traditional begging, I suppose the begging rites really. Because a lot of them used to wear masks. Which, if you think about the shamanic associations with Northern Europe, particularly like, you know, Finland, places like that, used to wear masks, didn't they? Beat drums.
So, are we talking about the morality plays?
I don't know what come first: the morality plays, the paradise plays, and all that sort of thing, the biblical stuff. No, the other ones, the wearing of the masks, going round, causing mischief, asking for, I don't know, a treat. A bit like trick or treat. A little bit like trick or treat. Well, again, it's one of them things, because it wasn't written down, they don't know how far back it went, but things like the mummers plays, masking, guising, as they used to call it. So people would go from house to house, perform some sort of entertainment, and like warrant a bit of meat and drink for the privilege. Basically, I think it was the rights of the agricultural poor to supplement, the meagre incomes at that time of year. So they go up to the big house and perform a little play and get a little bit extra, basically, see him through the winter. A little bit, a few coins maybe, I don't know. There are records, in big house, like these mansions and big houses, in their records, there's actually, lots of records of paying for mummers plays and various entertainments. So, it's not like it didn't happen. But like I say, it probably went back a lot further, to even maybe before the feudal system. In Europe, it sort of retained its character to a degree with things like the Krampuslauf and things like the Bussajara. What's the other one? The Kukurai. Man, they're amazing to see. I don't think many of the viewers might be aware of this, but absolutely stunning. But the mummers play is what we used to do here across Britain. They used to do it in Ireland as well. It's called the Wren Boy.
Yeah, the Wren Boys. In past times and into the 20th century, an actual bird was hunted by the Wren Boys on St. Stephen's Day. The captured wren was tied to the Wren Boy leader's staff, which was a net attached to a pitchfork or a holly bush, which was decorated with coloured paper and ribbons. It would sometimes be kept alive, as the popular Mummers Parade song states. A penny or twopence would do it no harm. So the Wren Boys would go from house to house in the countryside collecting money, but in the towns the groups were more organised, and it sounds like a racket. Yeah, a racket. And there was often an element of faction fighting. In both cases there would be a Wren captain, usually wearing a cape and carrying a sword, musicians and people wearing guises, including straw costumes worn by straw boys and dressed as old women. It's a day of wild revelry, and people usually use their disguises to play tricks on their friends. This behaviour is reminiscent of the skeckling tradition on the Shetland Islands. The money collected from the townspeople is usually donated to a school or charity, or used to host a dance or wren ball for the town on a night in January. Often the boys gave a feather from the bird to patrons for good luck. In recent times, the band of young boys has been expanded to include girls and adults. So,
but that's more to do with hunting a bird called the wren or ranny. Troglodytes. It's the Latin name.
An unfortunate name for such a...
I think it's because it lives in a little nest that looks like a hole. I think the earliest accounts of that are actually in Wales. It's one of those things. The wren was a bird that was venerated by the Druids. It was venerated by Druids as like an augury. But I think it was known as the Druid's bird or the Drua. I think there was a tale spun around the wren, which it was a lie. He's called the king of the birds. There's a rhyme. The wren, the king of the birds. Something hunted in the furs. I don't know. Can't remember the rhyme, but there was a rhyme to go with this bird. And they think what it did is it said it was the greatest bird and it could fly higher than any eagle. So this wren is basically boasting, and then the eagle says, right, okay, I'll challenge you to fly as high as you can. But what he did is he snuck into the feathers, and as the eagle got higher and higher in altitude until it couldn't go any further, the wren then jumped out.
Yeah.
And obviously got a few inches on so he could claim it was the king of the birds.
It's certainly the loudest bird.
Oh yeah, it is really
loudest,
yeah.
And the
But
smallest.
it's funny how at this time of year it's one of the few birds that are seen commonly in your garden, isn't it? Along with the robin, which is another one which, obviously that's got Christian connotations because of the red breast and the...
There's another one though.
What?
The postal service in the UK used to wear
red, yeah.
Red. A red tunic.
So the association,
the Christmas card.
But a similar begging ritual in Britain, across Britain, from Scotland all the way, down to the south of England, was the mummers plays, and they were like a begging ritual. Or I think some were called guisers, some were called mummers, some were called solars. very similar to some of the ones that you see. I think in Cheshire, there's still souling, people who go around souling, asking for soul cakes. It's Halloween. So it's a similar period of the year. It's the same creepy season. And you dress all in rags and you black your face. Nothing to do with racial nonsense. I think it represented the dead.
Yeah.
And people who you did the play in front of, if they recognised who you were, the luck was broken somehow.
Right.
So they used to disguise.
A disguise.
Yeah, that's where guise has come from, disguising. This is what Henry VIII put the kibosh on, because he was afraid of spies disguising themselves and committing whatever they did back then. So he banned it. A bit like the laws of charity. He changed the laws of charity around as well. Because it used to be, if anyone came to your door in need and you gave them charity, your standing in society, in that village or that town or wherever, would rise. But he changed it because of the whole paranoia thing. And I think he changed it so if you wanted any sort of charity, you had to go to a specific place, made it more difficult. And the mummers thing, but it did persist up until the First World War. And then, you know, all the people that used to do it went away, and a lot of them never came back. So the mummers play took a nosedive. In fact, it's what got me into folklore in the first place.
And why we revived.
We revived one, yeah. We did it the turn of the millennium. We thought it'd be quite a good thing to do, to revive something, save it going underground. It took me nearly a year to make costumes because I did it all on my own. But yeah, we enjoyed it. But the reason we didn't continue with it is because no one was interested. We thought it was like an anachronism and we were being a bit weird.
Yeah.
But I think it had a real value, you know, and certainly the places where we went did.
Yeah.
You know, they enjoyed it, didn't they? Give it, and I don't know, it's quite unnerving when we all walk in a place. You know, can you remember some of the comments we used to get and stuff like that? And take people's breath away.
Yeah.
With the costumes. But
and
we, you know, the people that we were involving ourselves with at the time were a bunch of lightweights who would rather stay home and watch Blind Date or some such. Yeah, so we used to do that, collect for charity.
It's good.
And for 4 years it was really good. But then everyone welched on us. Shame. It'd still be going today, wouldn't it?
Yeah. And when we performed it, it was the first time that those sounds and plays had been performed in 200 years.
Yeah.
Or thereabouts.
Yeah, the Rough Fleet.
The Rough Fleet Mummers, we were called. Yeah.
We took the name of, it was from, I can't remember, John Ward's history that we took the name from, because that's the name they had in this area. Yeah. But yeah, it was a marvellous experience, and wish we were still doing it, but, you know, it's getting people to put that costume on and join in, and people just generally don't. But however, I think there's a burgeoning interest in it now.
There is now, yeah.
You know.
Eggnog.
You know this New Year's resolution thing? I think the Vikings, they used to be in there in the longhouse, and they'd all be there, and they'd be doing the sacrifice. And what they'd do is they'd dip the birch twigs in there and in the blood, and they'd splash it on the idols and stuff like that. What they used to eat is wild boar, as well as...
Wild boar! Wild boar!
Yeah, as well as horse meat. And I think they used to have to swear an oath on the hog's head.
Right.
That's what they think. Maybe that's where the Christmas ham idea comes from, I don't know. But swearing on the hog's head an oath of what you propose to do the following year. And I think it was so...
That's a Viking tradition.
Yeah, but I think it was so severe. If you didn't carry out what you were going to say,
yeah,
you turned into a duck. Yeah. No, you got done in.
I love the Boar's Head carol.
Yeah, I'd sing it, but it's in Latin, I think. Is that the one I'm thinking of?
Yeah.
Steel Eye Span.
Yeah.
Yeah. The Boar's Head, da 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 da, and Rosemary. Yeah.
The greatest dish in all the land.
Yeah. Quod estes.
Convivium.
Something, yeah.
Yeah. Anyway.
We're not Latin scholars. I don't know if it shows.
Or singers.
Tradition since 1966. Some local businessman, Stig something Larson.
His name was Gervler.
Oh, it was Gervler, wasn't it?
Or Gavel.
Gavler, sounds the same.
Yeah.
Yeah, he thought it'd be a good idea because he loved goats for some reason.
Well, he loved money
Yeah.
and he loved goats. So
Yeah.
he wanted to combine the two.
Yeah, so they made a massive straw effigy. I think it's like 14 metres.
It's massive.
Huge
It's
goat
huge.
made of straw. But since they've been doing it, it's been burnt down
36 times out of whatever.
38 times out of 52.
Something like that.
No, it's longer than that, 66. Well,
I suspect there's a little bit of a gambling racket going on with that as well.
yeah, but they've now got like high tech. I mean, it's one year it was stolen by a helicopter.
That's brilliant. I think the best one I heard was Santa Claus
and a gingerbread
man firing arrows at it.
Yeah, I've seen a great little. Someone's made a little movie of that.
Have they?
It's on YouTube, I think.
Is it an animation?
No, it's real life, and they're dressed up and everything, running through the woods. I think it's more of a dramatic, artistic piece than
I think
a rollicking story.
it would be a great animation done like the Judder Man. Can you remember the Judder Man?
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
it was puppetry, wasn't it?
No.
Was it? Was it
No,
stop
it
motion?
was live action.
Yeah, puppets.
No. It was like a person.
Oh, you mean the dancer guy who played the Judder Man? Yeah.
Beware the Judder Man, my dear, when the moon is fat.
You know, I think it's a good thing, and plus now it is because they've got this live stream. If you're interested, just Google Yule goat, and you can watch the live stream. It's a bit boring because it's a camera focused on a goat, but it's live stream, so you can see all the chat, and there's some interesting stuff going on in the chat.
Yeah.
Like how to set it on fire. Anyway,
What's that stuff Mythbusters used to burn through anything?
Thermite.
Thermite.
Yeah, but it needs to have really high temperature to get it to start. That's the only thing.
I'm not a scientist.
Neither am I.
Did the Romans mess anything up when they got here?
No, Satellania Sol Invictus. Oh yeah, we were talking about the fact that so they had Sol Invictus, so that's the unconquered sun. So that's basically when the sun starts to move again.
Yeah.
Saturnalia, which was I think earlier in December, and it celebrated Saturn, the god Saturn.
Isn't he our god?
I think that's where. What do you mean our god?
Well, not our god, but Saturday morning seance.
Well, I suppose it's named after him, Saturday. Saturnalia was the Roman equivalent to the earlier Greek holiday of Coronia. It held theological importance for some Romans, who saw it as a restoration of an ancient golden age when the world was ruled by Saturn. Philosopher Porphyry interpreted the freedom associated with Saturnalia as symbolising the freeing of souls into immortality. The historical Western European Christmas custom of electing a Lord of Misrule may have its roots in these Saturnalia celebrations. While mostly known as a British holiday custom, some folklorists such as Sir James Fraser have claimed that the appointment of a Lord of Misrule comes from a similar custom practiced during the Roman celebration of Saturnalia. The other Roman celebration was this Sol Invictus thing. The birth of Jesus was not celebrated by the early church. It was because there was no consensus as to when it actually had occurred. The birth of Jesus, you don't know. It doesn't make any reference to when it was. They just got these rude calculations that various people did. But it was a handy date. It was that Scriptus Cyrus or whatever that wrote down in I think it was the 4th century about observing the heathens and the stuff they were doing and thought, wow, we may as well join in and get them on our side. But yeah, the tree. Can you imagine it? I mean, there's all talk of like the tree comes from the sacrifice, the blood and the snow. and then hanging the entrails of some sort of...
I've heard that as well,
carc-
like a very meaty sort of decoration.
Yeah, like sausages. Essentially, you may as well do it with sausages.
Yeah.
And that's where the tinsel comes. I'm not sure. I haven't really found anything.
Well, I suppose the intestines draped around your tree, you know, and you've got that candlelight, it would glisten.
To start with, perhaps they were just making beef jerky. Let's talk about the modern Christmas tree. So, thought to originate from Western Germany. The main prop of the popular medieval play about Adam and Eve was a paradise tree, a fir tree hung with apples that represented the Garden of Eden. The Germans set up a paradise tree in their homes on the 24th of December, the religious feast day of Adam and Eve. They hung wafers on it.
Waffle schmung.
Waffle schmung!
That's something. It's a German.
I don't want to eat anything with the name schmung in it. Anyway, I think they represented the Eucharist, so you know, like the hosts.
Yeah.
Pope wafers. The Christian sign of redemption. In later tradition, the wafers were replaced by cookies, candles, and glass beads, symbolic of Christ as the light of the world. In the same room was the Christmas pyramid, a triangular construction of wood that had shelves to hold Christmas figurines and was decorated with evergreens, candles, and stars. By the 16th century, the Christmas pyramid and the paradise tree had been merged to become the Christmas tree.
I like the idea of the Christmas pyramid.
Probably easier to tidy away. The Vikings and Saxons worshipped trees. The story of St. Boniface cutting down Donar's, that's the cognate of Thor, cutting down Donar's oak illustrates the pagan practice in the 8th century among the Germans. A later folk version of the story adds a detail that an evergreen tree grew in its place, telling them about how its triangular shape reminds humanity of the Trinity and how it points to heaven. This was made up by Lady Louise Harvey in 1912 in her article How St. Boniface Kept Christmas, using Pliny's account of the ritual where incantations to Thor were recorded. So it was made up, that old Boniface thing. I remember learning that in Mr. Colclough's class when I was a kid.
Yeah.
No names. Names, we don't say names. I remember learning it in his class. And for all the world, it's like, well, that's where the Christmas tree comes from. And as you grow up and you're an adult and you start looking for yourself, you realise it's all horse shit.
Enoch's dreaming of a white Christmas, just like the ones they used to know.
Well, what about mistletoe? We don't decorate the Christmas tree with mistletoe, but it's a big part of Christmas traditions, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of talk, it's nothing to do with druids. It sort of is. So stuff wasn't written down, like all these little tiny customs weren't written down. However, Pliny did mention it. Cut the druids cutting it out of a tree with a sickle. I think golden sickle. But actually, if you, I don't know if you've ever seen it, but it sort of looks a yellow golden colour sometimes. The ancient Greeks used to call it oak sperm. The Celts, there was a god called Tyrannus, and I think they thought it was the sperm of Tyrannus.
It's certainly got that colour to it.
Well, yeah, and sort of consistency. It's between my fingers.
What is?
I don't know. Stop.
Yeah.
Stop. I don't know what I'm miming there. It's a semi-obligate parasite. So it hasn't got a true root system. It's got like this thing they call the Hostoria, which basically, if you put it under, you can grow it yourself on certain trees. Hawthorn, apples. It very rarely grows on oak apparently, but I don't know. You push it under a fissure in the bark, and what it'll do is it'll germinate, and then it'll put this. Basically, it takes nutrients from the tree, so it's semi-parasitic, but it photosynthesizes, and it produces these berries. Now, these berries, the Viscum album, which is the European mistletoe, is toxic as fuck. However, other species across the world are really tasty. Not only that, they've recently, they found evidence that it's really good anti-cancer drug. So it's got, if you want, a magical property. It actually has. There's lots of plants, like, ancient knowledge would use for certain things, and it's actually true. Now, I think in Norse mythology, I think it was Frigg, she put some sort of hex or something on all plants growing from the earth, and because it doesn't grow from the earth, Loki then went and got it and used it as a spear and killed Baldur with it. But I think the associations with it go much further back, but they just weren't written down. And mistletoe is one of them things that I think Washington Irving had a hand in the mythology of, because in his book of sketches, which I think we both read, he talks about Christmas Eve, and he talks about this game of kissing under the mistletoe, and then he says like it's a plant beloved of pagans, which gave it a bit of a sexy frisson. You were doing something a bit naughty, and I think that association just carried through to today. Pliny, writing about the Druids, did say that it will make an infertile animal, cattle, fertile. So I think those things, again, a bit over time become skewed, and now it's become this thing where it's got some sort of fertility rite associated with it. That Professor Ronald Hutton.
Yeah.
Say he knows of only, because he's a bit of an expert on all this stuff.
Totally, yeah.
He knows of only 2 oaks in the whole of the UK with mistletoe that grows on them.
Really?
Yeah.
So it's not common?
No, not on oaks. It's common on hawthorn, apples, apple trees and stuff.
Okay.
But I think it was only used by the Druids if it was grown on the oak, which would make it that much more special. Yeah. There's so much we could have covered. It's ridiculous. Christmas is such a massively complex holiday. The rites and traditions surrounding it, you could write volumes and volumes and volumes, depending on what region you're in. It is fascinating, but this time of year for me is massively special. It's that idea, it's that gemütlich, as the Germans used to call it.
Gemütlich, yeah.
That feeling of being indoors cosy when it's like a raging storm outside. There's a lot of things, that bring charm to this time of year. I wouldn't necessarily just dispel it all, but I think that's nature. We said at the beginning, it's all made up. Like the Lord Brassicus, who giveth the farts on Boxing Day. A lot of it's made up, and it's like it's borrowed all the way down the line. You call it syncretism, so you just keep adding bits on what you want.
I mean, syncretic,
yeah. So you're just adding little bits on that suit and stuff, and it becomes this thing, and that's the thing. It can be anything you want, and it can mean anything to anybody. But yeah, the whole Christmas thing. I love the Christmas thing. I love the Dickens idea of Christmas, redemption. I mean, and if we look as we've looked through
change.
This, yeah, it used to be about survival, and that was it. But now, for a lot of people who don't have to struggle like that, and they've got a decent life, it's about giving. It's about being a better human being. About helping out a neighbour, or chatting to someone you haven't spoken to for ages, or some such, and put your hand in your pocket and help someone out who hasn't got anything.
Yuletide is about compassion and connection.
Yeah, giving to those less fortunate, I suppose. That's a good thing.
Yeah.
No matter what religion you are. Yeah, and don't get involved with the nonsense you see in the mass media.
Reach out to your friends and your neighbours.
Yeah.
It'll make the season more meaningful.
Yeah, have a wonderful Yuletide. A wonderful one. May your beer be dark and brown and spicy and flavourful. And may the sorcerer look favourable on you.
Or as the Spanish say, eat well.
Shit hard.
Shit hard.
Yeah. And eat plenty of them and you will. Lord Brassicus!
Do the shake and bake and put the freshness